Hello and welcome to the Cleveland Sports Bros podcast. I'm Matt alongside Nick. Nick, how are you doing today?
Great. Always love talking sports.
Yep, me as well. So today, we're not going to talk so much Browns. We'll definitely talk more about them next week as we head into the final week of the preseason, I guess, or week one, leading up to week one against Carolina. Obviously, that's a big game for a lot of reasons. We'll talk more about them next week, but we'll definitely talk about the Guardians today. We have a lot to say about them. They're continuing to play pretty well, and hopefully, as we head to a playoff push. And I want to mention one note about the Buckeyes. We have college football. Well, it actually started last weekend for a few games and a few teams, but the Buckeyes are playing Notre Dame this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. at the Horseshoe. Huge top 5 matchup. The only thing is Ohio State is projected to win favored by 17.5 points at this moment in time. So Nick, if you're Ryan Day, the head coach, are you worried about that getting in the players' heads or anything?
Maybe a little bit, only because I know Notre Dame is a very talented football staff, and you can never just assume you're going to dominate one team, regardless of what the members say. You need to go out there and play hard every single down, offense, defense, special teams.
Yeah, well said. And I know years past, Ohio State, usually like most teams plays much weaker opponents week 1, week 2, early on in the season. And they have struggled. And they usually win by a lot, but they have gotten off to slow starts and things like that. They lost to Oregon last year, which was again, they hosted that one. That was unexpected. The offense definitely was not clicking. The defense was getting burned. So, I don't think they can take Notre Dame lightly. They should win, and they should win by a lot. I know the crowd will be very hyped. It'll be a night game, probably 110,000 fans. So we're really looking forward to that matchup. And we'll see if CJ Stroud, their quarterback, can get off to the hot start that he finished the season on. He's one of the Heisman favorites. And, they have still a really good receiving core, even though they lost some great players in the draft. So it'll be fun to watch Ohio State as they go through the year. They can't take Notre Dame lightly. They just can't afford to do that. And they should, they're going to be favored in every game they play until they make the playoffs, assuming they get there. So I'm looking forward to them hopefully taking care of business, and we'll certainly talk more. We'll recap them next week, but definitely wanted to touch on the Buckeyes in the kickoff to college football season. And, as we await the NFL season as well. But let's talk a little Guardians right now. Nick, do you want to provide an update?
Yeah, so before last night's game against the Orioles, Cleveland was in Seattle facing a very similar young team that matches up very well against them, the Seattle Mariners. And if the playoffs started today, Cleveland would actually be hosting them. We had our struggles against the Mariners. It was a 4-game series, and we were only able to take one game. And unlike many series in the past, Cleveland was having struggles putting up runs and even getting a chance having men in scoring possession. And when Seattle had their chances, they just took advantage, and Cleveland could not keep up. They do play them again in the near future back home. We'll see if they can rebound from that. It'll be another good test. There's a very good chance we could see them hopefully in the playoffs in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference too. If we're able to host, just you never know what's going to happen when you fly all the way out to the West Coast, and it messes with your schedule and things like that. Completely different time zone and different area. You're not sleeping in your own bed, anything like that. So would love to host them or anyone. I think we can both say just make the playoffs will be happy with that and then go from there. So you mentioned we're playing them. We got 2 more games to wrap up against Baltimore. Baltimore is better this year than they have in probably the past decade or so. They're fighting for a playoff spot, but 2 more against them, and then, like you said, we'll play 3 more against Seattle, then the Royals, and then a huge series starting September 9th against the Twins. Currently, the Twins are in second place. We're just a game and a half up. So that, I know we've talked about this series before. That's going to be a critical one, as the Guardians hope to, make it in the playoffs and keep the playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, there's only 8 more games against some Minnesota Twins. 5 of them are gonna be played at Progressive Field. I don't recall the date, but one of them is including a doubleheader. Should be the final doubleheader of the year, assuming there's no more bad weather getting in the way. But recapping last night on the Guardians O's matchup, Cleveland got off to a hot start, like we've seen them do in the past. Probably 3 times they had the bases loaded. And one player I want to discuss in particular is Stephen Kwan. He had a massive 2-run double last night. And, as a leadoff man, I understand he, didn't double the bases empty, but he's been a really good piece to this offense. And him, Jose Gonzalez, it's a real good, it's third of the batting order. And they just need to keep taking the hits that they can get. Tito always talks about don't push for extra bases if they're not there. Take what you can get, and then just keep, passing the baton, and you can get runs like they did last night with the 5-1 win.
Yeah, I think really good update. And I want to talk more about Tito because he's someone that I hope Guardians fans don't take him for granted. I know it was a huge signing when we landed him as manager. I know there's some controversy in Boston, but he is proving yet again that he is, I think, the best manager in baseball right now. To do what he's able to do with this payroll and this roster, it's not filled with stars. You don't have the payroll like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets or even Houston, and he still just manages to win. You talked a little bit about batting. I want to talk more broadly on the team and batting. So they're 10th in batting average, which is pretty good, of course. We love that, but only 18th in on base percentage and 29th in home runs. So clearly Tito is doing something. He's making them get the most out of their, the situations they're in, base running, stealing, things like that, not getting too aggressive or anything like that. But Tito is clearly having an impact. At least that's what I think when I look at those numbers. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot about how he has been able to accomplish that. The Guardians have had 14 rookies this year make some sort of impact one way or another. There's been Stephen Kwan, Oscar Gonzalez, Nolan Jones for a little bit. He's back in AAA, but my point is what Tito has mentioned and what other reporters like Tom Hamilton have said. If you come up here to the majors, at least on the Guardians ball club, they don't want it stuck in the rookie's head. I'm gonna have the same numbers that I had in the minors, because that's gonna change and it's not gonna be any easier. And as long as you care about winning, that's what the veteran teammates are gonna care about. You'll gain their respect more quickly, and I think they all just fit in and care about that so much that they're able to rally off one another, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah, good point. And I want to make 2 points to follow up on that is when you said that they brought up 14 rookies this year, and you can't have the same expectations that you're going to perform the same as they did in the minors. A few reasons for that. One, clearly the major leagues, they have proven players up and down the rosters versus the minors where there's still a lot of guys who, maybe one day will make it. But the Guardians, we talked, they're not only the youngest team in the major leagues, they would be the youngest AAA team if they were to be, an actual AAA roster. So these guys are really not, they don't have a ton of experience at the big league level. And that just, again, goes to show that they're performing really well. Tito is managing really well. And they have amazing team chemistry. I think that's something that can get overlooked when the Guardians had a recent series in San Diego against Padres. The Padres have a star-studded lineup, and we know they just signed or traded for Juan Soto at the deadline, but they still haven't been clicking. They have a lineup that is one of the best in baseball, and they could make the playoffs. They're still fighting for that, but we know Cleveland took that series, and it was only a 2-game series, but took that and swept them. And it just goes to show that all the little things matter, and the Guardians seems to be doing all that. And then, of course, the other side is not just batting and managing. They clearly have one of the best pitching staffs in the majors. And even if they're not hitting nearly as many home runs as other teams, in fact, they're one of the worst in that category, they're doing amazing. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about their pitching?
So I think one of the biggest names, at least in this rotation, has got to be Tristan McKenzie. We see him give up home runs here or there. Thankfully, when he does, they haven't seemed to be big game changers. Like, surprisingly, they've mostly been solo homers, which hasn't hurt the team. But I think, in the near future, he could become a top Cy Young pitcher, or at least in the running to win the award, maybe even next season. Another big name that I like, of course, we all know the name Shane Bieber. He's the leader of the 5 men, but another name I'd like to point out is Cal Quantrill. He's from Canada. He pitched last night against the Orioles, and he averages about 6 innings per start. He went 7 innings last night and only allowed a single hit and earned run. Actually, combined as a team, it was Quantrill, and Clase. They combined didn't allow any more hits. And I also wanted to mention the defense. There's been some questions about our center fielder, Miles Straw, as a hitter. He's the best center fielder defensively in baseball, but his average is below 2. I understand you're going to have your up and down years, and maybe he just needs a day or 2 off. And Will Benson, another rookie who was actually playing center field last night, not only made a spectacular grab in right center field and prevented the Orioles from scoring, but he got an RBI single, and he even scored a run on a hit by Jose Ramirez. And like I said, getting the 5 runs in a game with this rotation, you're gonna have a pretty good chance to win. And they kept, moving the line along and handle the Orioles. It was, pretty much decided after the 5th inning. Hopefully they can battle and clinch a series win tonight.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I think really good recap. We'll definitely talk more Guardians as we head into September and the playoff push. Uh, Obviously we've seen in years past pitching has carried this team. I expect them to do that again this year. Would love for some of these bats to continue and improve, because if we can go from 29th in home runs, not that we had moved the needle that much, but improve our production from that standpoint, I think the team could definitely surprise some people and, maybe even get a series win in the playoffs. Don't want to get that far yet. Still 35 games to go, but really excited about this team and looking forward to watching them through the rest of the season.
Definitely. And, you know, I'm, one game at a time, like you just pointed out, don't want to get too far ahead. But I'm, crossing off the days until we face the Minnesota Twins. There's 8 games left, and those 8 games are really going to decide who wins this division. We know it's not going to be the White Sox. The Tigers and the Royals have already been out with the running for quite some time. So by the end of the year, it's going to be Cleveland or Minnesota at the top of the division. We just got our fingers crossed that it's going to be us, and we're going to have a chance to make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if I'd completely count the White Sox out yet, but it seems like they are, or they're counting themselves out, maybe. But definitely take care of business. It is your division to lose, I think. But really excited about it and really looking forward to watching them play, like we said, for the rest of the season. So great recap, Nick. Always fun talking. Next week we'll definitely talk more football. We'll recap the Buckeyes. We'll give a Guardians recap as well. And again, everyone, thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Cleveland Sports Bros podcast.